There's something about walking through a forest that makes you feel completely alive. The moment I stepped onto the narrow, winding path, the air changed. It was cooler, crisper, and filled with the earthy scent of damp leaves and pine needles. The towering trees stretched high above me, their branches forming a canopy that filtered the sunlight into golden beams. It felt as if I had stepped into another world, one untouched by time. With each step, the forest seemed to wrap itself around me. The crunch of leaves under my boots was the only sound for a while, until I started noticing the subtle symphony of the woods. Birds called to each other from unseen perches, their melodies blending with the rustling of the wind through the branches. Somewhere in the distance, a small brook gurgled as it danced over smooth stones, its gentle murmur adding to the peacefulness of the surroundings. As I walked, I couldn't help but run my fingers along the rough bark of an ancient oak, feeling the deep grooves that told stories of countless seasons. The forest was alive in a way that cities never could be. Everywhere I looked, something was moving, shifting, growing. Tiny insects darted among the leaves, a squirrel scurried up a tree with practiced ease, and a rabbit froze mid-hop before disappearing into the underbrush. It was as if the forest had its own quiet rhythm, one that I was only just beginning to understand. The deeper I ventured, the more I felt like I was shedding the weight of the outside world. The worries and distractions of everyday life seemed distant, irrelevant. Here, it was just me and the trees, the path stretching ahead like an invitation to keep going, to explore more, to simply exist in the moment. Then, suddenly, I heard something, a rustling that was different from the usual whispers of the wind. I paused, my breath hitching slightly as I scanned the dense foliage. And then I saw them, 2 deer, standing not far from the path, their sleek coats dappled by the sunlight. They watched me with large, dark eyes, their ears flicking slightly as they assessed whether I was a threat. For a few heartbeats, we just stood there, frozen in a quiet, almost sacred moment. And then, with a graceful bound, they disappeared into the trees, leaving nothing but the faint rustling of leaves in their wake. I smiled to myself, feeling as if I had just witnessed something special, something meant only for those who took the time to truly see the world around them. With a deep breath, I continued walking, feeling lighter, more connected, more alive than I had in a long time. The forest had a way of reminding you of what really mattered, not the noise of modern life, but the simple, quiet beauty of just being present. And as I followed the winding path, I knew I would return to this place again, to lose myself in its whispers and find myself in its silence. As I rounded a bend in the trail, voices broke the quiet spell of the woods. Up ahead, a group of hikers emerged, their laughter and excited chatter filling the air. There were 5 of them, 2 men, 3 women, all carrying backpacks and dressed for adventure. They greeted me with warm smiles, and one of them, a tall man with a scruffy beard, asked if I had seen anything interesting along the way. "A pair of deer just a little ways back," I said, and their eyes lit up with excitement. One of the women, a nature photographer, quickly adjusted the camera hanging from her neck, eager to capture whatever wildlife lay ahead. We fell into step together, our shared appreciation for the forest bonding us instantly. As we walked, one of the hikers, an older woman with silver-streaked hair, told stories of the legends surrounding this forest, tales of hidden caves, ghostly whispers, and ancient trees that were said to watch over those who entered. Her words sent a thrill down my spine, and suddenly, the rustling in the underbrush seemed more mysterious, the shadows between the trees deeper. As we continued, we stumbled upon a small clearing where an abandoned cabin stood, its weathered wooden walls barely holding together. Curiosity drew us closer, and as we peeked inside, we saw old furniture covered in dust, a rusted lantern hanging from a nail, and a faded journal lying open on a broken table. One of the hikers picked it up and read a passage aloud, the words detailing a traveler's journey through the forest decades ago. The air in the cabin felt thick with history, as if the whispers of the past still lingered within its walls. Leaving the cabin behind, we pressed on, our steps filled with newfound excitement. The trail led us to a hidden waterfall, its crystal-clear waters cascading down moss-covered rocks into a serene pool below. The sight was breathtaking, and without hesitation, some of us waded into the cool water, laughing as the mist kissed our skin. The forest had gifted us an unexpected moment of pure joy, one that none of us would soon forget. As the day wore on and the sun began its slow descent, we finally reached a fork in the path where we had to part ways. Promises were made to meet again, to return to this place and uncover more of its secrets. As I walked away, now alone once more, I realized that the forest had given me more than just a peaceful escape. It had brought new friendships, shared adventures, and a sense of wonder that would stay with me long after I left its embrace. As I walked away from the group, my mind buzzed with the thrill of the discoveries we had made. The abandoned cabin and its dusty journal lingered in my thoughts, filling me with a sense of wonder and curiosity. What other secrets did this forest hold? The path twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the wilderness. The golden light of the late afternoon sun shimmered through the trees, casting long, shifting shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. I found myself walking faster, an unexplainable energy coursing through me, as if the forest itself was urging me forward. Then, in the distance, I heard it, a distant drumming. At first, I thought it was my own heartbeat, but as I strained my ears, I realized it was something else entirely. The rhythmic sound pulsed through the trees, growing louder with each step. Intrigued, I followed the sound until I stumbled into a clearing where a group of people had gathered around a large bonfire. The scene before me was mesmerizing. A dozen or so travelers, all dressed in mismatched hiking gear, danced around the fire, their movements fluid and free. Others sat on logs, playing instruments, drums, flutes, even a violin. The air was alive with music and laughter, and for a moment, I simply watched, taking it all in. A woman with bright green eyes and a crown of wildflowers noticed me and waved me over. "Welcome, wanderer," she called. "You've found the forest circle. Join us." I hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward. The warmth of the fire washed over me, and soon I was handed a mug of something warm and spiced. The travelers introduced themselves. Some were solo adventurers like me, others had been coming to this spot for years, drawn back by the unexplainable magic of the forest. "There's something about this place," said a man named Elias, his beard flecked with gray. "It brings people together. It makes you see the world differently." As if on cue, an excited voice called out, "Look up." We all tilted our heads toward the sky just in time to see a streak of light, a meteor burning across the heavens. Gasps and cheers filled the air as it disappeared beyond the horizon. I sat down next to an older woman named Marjorie, who had been coming to the forest for decades. She leaned close and whispered, "Some say the forest calls people here when they need to find something or someone. Perhaps that's why you're here." The idea sent a shiver down my spine, but before I could respond, a shout rang out from the other side of the clearing. "Something's moving in the woods." The music stopped. The laughter faded. Everyone turned toward the darkened tree line, where the firelight barely reached. A rustling sound echoed through the night, growing closer. A figure emerged, a young man, out of breath, his clothes torn as if he had been running through the underbrush. His eyes were wide with fear. There's something back there," he gasped. "Something big." Instantly, a few of the more experienced hikers grabbed flashlights and headed toward the trees. My heart pounded as I joined them, the thrill of the unknown pushing aside my fear. We stepped cautiously into the darkness, our beams cutting through the thick foliage. Then we saw them, massive footprints pressed deep into the damp earth. They didn't belong to any deer or bear. They were too large, too strange. "What the hell made these?" someone murmured. A snapping sound came from beyond the trees, and the group froze. The air was thick with anticipation. Then, just as suddenly as the noise had started, it stopped. We stood there, waiting, but whatever had been there was gone. "Let's get back to the fire," Elias said, his voice steady but low. "We don't want to be out here if it comes back." Back at the clearing, the travelers exchanged theories. Was it an animal? A lost hiker? Something else? Marjorie simply sipped her drink and smiled knowingly. "The forest has many secrets," she said. "Some are best left undiscovered." The night continued with more stories, laughter, and music, but a sense of mystery lingered in the air. I knew I had stumbled into something bigger than just a hike. And as I finally lay back and stared up at the stars, I realized one thing for certain: I would return. Because this forest had more to tell, more to show, and I was ready to listen. The night continued with more stories, laughter, and music, but a sense of mystery lingered in the air. I knew I had stumbled into something bigger than just a hike. And as I finally lay back and stared up at the stars, I realized one thing for certain: I would return. Because this forest had more to tell, more to show, and I was ready to listen. The next morning, the first rays of sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting golden light on the remnants of the night's gathering. Some travelers were already packing their gear, while others sat quietly by the dying embers of the fire, sipping coffee and staring into the woods as if expecting something or someone to emerge. Just as I was preparing to set off again, a new group arrived, a team of biologists carrying high-tech equipment and cameras. One of them, a woman named Dr. Lillian Carter, approached us with an air of excitement. "We've been tracking unusual activity in this forest for years," she explained. "Strange sounds, massive footprints, even unexplained disappearances. Did any of you encounter anything last night?" The young man who had stumbled into the clearing the night before nodded vigorously. "I saw it, well, part of it. It was tall, shadowy, and fast. I thought it was following me." Dr. Carter exchanged glances with her team. "Then we're in the right place." Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked to join them. Along with a few others from the forest circle, we set off deeper into the woods, guided by Carter's equipment. As we ventured further, the air grew heavier, almost charged with an unspoken energy. We found more footprints, some fresh, others older. Then, we discovered something even more astonishing: claw marks on a tree, nearly 10 feet off the ground. "This isn't just some lost hiker," one of Carter's team whispered. "We might be dealing with something completely undiscovered." The group pressed on, the thrill of discovery pushing us forward. Every step felt like peeling back a layer of the forest's many secrets. Then, in a small clearing ahead, something glinted in the morning sun, a metallic object half buried in the underbrush. Carter knelt and brushed away the dirt, revealing what appeared to be a rusted compass, but not just any compass. The markings were unfamiliar, its needle spinning wildly despite the still air. "This doesn't make sense," Carter murmured. "This is old. Very old. And it shouldn't be here." The discovery sent a ripple of excitement and unease through the group. What had we stumbled upon? A lost relic? A connection to whatever lurked in the shadows? One thing was certain: this forest was far from ordinary. And we had only begun to scratch the surface of its mysteries. As we stood in the clearing, staring at the rusted compass spinning wildly in Dr. Carter's hand, an eerie silence fell over the group. The forest, which had once felt so alive with the sounds of nature, seemed to be holding its breath. Then, a sharp cry echoed from the trees. Everyone turned, flashlights flicking on despite the growing morning light. A young researcher, barely out of her 20s, was pointing toward the tree-line. Something moved just there. Dr. Carter's team sprang into action. Cameras were raised, infrared scanners activated. I felt my heart pounding as we stepped cautiously toward the source of the noise. We weren't alone. A deep, guttural sound, half growl, half unnatural clicking, resonated through the air. A shadow shifted behind the trees, impossibly tall and fast. Whatever it was watching us. The seasoned hikers instinctively formed a protective circle around the younger members of the group, their hands gripping knives, walking sticks, anything that could serve as a weapon. Dr. Carter, eyes wide with a mix of terror and fascination, whispered, "This could be the greatest discovery of our time." A sudden burst of movement. The shadow lunged and then vanished. The trees rustled violently, then fell still. Whatever had been there was gone, for now. "Move, now." Elias barked, his experience as a survivalist taking over. "We need to get to higher ground." We hiked quickly, nearly jogging up an incline that led to a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley. From here, we could see more of the forest stretching below us. But what caught my eye wasn't the landscape, it was the movement. At least a dozen shapes darting through the trees, fast and fluid, their presence barely visible except for the way the foliage shifted in unnatural waves. "We're not dealing with one creature," Carter breathed. "There are many." Then, a voice shouted from the back of the group. One of the forest circle travelers had pulled out the old journal from the abandoned cabin, flipping through the yellowed pages frantically. "Listen to this. The last entry, it describes this exact thing." He read aloud. "They watch from the shadows. Not one, but many. moving as the wind moves, unseen but felt. The compass spins in their presence. They are not of this world, nor ours to understand. A heavy silence settled over us. My skin prickled. This wasn't just a discovery, this was a warning. Then, another sound, different this time. A low, vibrating hum, growing louder. Something above. We looked up just in time to see something massive, metallic, and gleaming hovering above the treetops. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, sleek, dark, shifting as if it wasn't entirely solid. The air around it shimmered. The creatures in the trees stopped moving. One by one, they turned toward the hovering object. Then, as if responding to some unspoken command, they melted back into the forest, vanishing as suddenly as they had appeared. The strange craft pulsed once with a dull glow, then shot skyward, disappearing beyond the clouds in the blink of an eye. We stood in stunned silence. "What the hell just happened?" one of the researchers muttered. Dr. Carter exhaled slowly. "We weren't the ones being hunted," she said. "They were running from that." A shiver ran through me. Whatever those creatures were, whatever they had been doing in this forest, they were afraid of something far greater than us. And now, that something had seen us too. The group descended the mountain in silence, each of us lost in thought. Some were eager to leave, to escape whatever they had just witnessed. Others, like Dr. Carter and Elias, wanted to stay, to uncover more secrets. As we reached the entrance of the trail, the sun was fully risen, casting the forest in warm, golden light. It almost looked normal again, just trees, just nature. But I knew better. Before we parted ways, Elias clapped a hand on my shoulder. "This isn't over," he said, his voice firm. "We'll be back. And next time, we'll be ready." I nodded. The forest had given us a glimpse of something incredible, something terrifying. And though my mind screamed at me to never return, my heart whispered otherwise. Because some mysteries are too great to leave unsolved. And the forest? The forest wasn't done with me yet.